Hi, this is Phil Carlton. Thanks for joining me today. I want to remind you can find me over on Facebook and also on YouTube you can follow and you'll see when I create a new video. Today I'm going to make a little In-the-Hoop holiday ornament. And I'm going to be working in the new mySewnet embroidery software, but everything that I do today can be done in Premiere Plus 2 as well. And there will be just a couple of differences and I will talk about those as I go. So the first thing I need to do, I'm going to just start a blank document. And I'm going to do that by here I'm at my new welcome screen in my mySewnet embroidery. And I'm going to click blank canvas. And the first thing it's going to do is ask me what size hoop I want to use. Now it looks like the last time I was here I had a 120 by 120 hoop. Today I want to make an ornament that's about 4 inches. So I'm going to make a little custom hoop sized to my project. I'm going to put a check mark and enter hoop size and set my width to 100 and my height to 100 and click OK. And now that's given me a 100 by 100 hoop, or roughly 4-inch square, so that's going to make it really easy to size my project. Now I'm going to do some lettering. I'm going to do this in kind of a different order than I might normally because I want to show a couple of things about the lettering first before I create the ornament part. So I'm going to go to my letter tab, and inside my fun category, there is a font called Christmas 50 to 100, and I really liked the numbers for this. So I'm going to come in here and type in 2020 for the year, and I'll start it at 50 millimeters. We may need to make it a little bit larger or smaller, and we can change it later. And I want to just show a couple of things about the letters. If I click apply, it brings that letter in, just like we're used to, just as horizontal text. I'm going to click delete on my keyboard because I want to show you this option right here, which is fit to straight line. And with fit to straight line, we have a couple of different options, and I'll show you both of them. First of all, when I click apply, now it's brought this lettering in, and I have this line right here, and as I adjust it, it changes the angle of that lettering, or the angle that it's running. So you can kind of easily put text kind of on a rotated angle almost. But I really like this option right here with them. So I'm going to click step. And I also saw those letters were a little close together. So I'm going to add a little bit of gap, which is going to add me just a little bit of space between each letter. And the step, what it does when I click apply, is I still have this angle where I can tell it what letters I want it. But this will adjust the angle of the letters. I like them kind of running left to right for this. I have a little more space between them than I like, so I think I'm going to right click and go into edit lettering, and in Premiere Plus 2 I think that would be properties, and I'm going to take the gap down to about 5. I think that will probably work, but I liked the way that stepped 2020 works, so I think that may work for our project. We'll have to look. I'm going to set that off to the side now. And the next thing I want to do is I want to create the applique piece. But because this is an ornament, I need a couple of extra things. I'm going to want my placement stitch. And for these, I would probably use a piece of batting and a piece of top fabric just to give it a little more body. Then I want a tack down so I can trim it. And then I need another stitch on the back to hold on a backing piece of fabric before I finish it with the satin stitch. So we're going to do that by working in the digitizing module. And that's what is called digitizing here in mySewnet embroidery. And in Premiere Plus 2, it would have been the create module. In Premiere Plus 2, you would have found the icon down here that looks like, I think it was a tulip or a rose, that would launch the Create module. To get to the digitizing here in mySewnet embroidery, I'm going to go to the Create tab here, and I have a button here that will insert a digitizing option. So let me go ahead and click on that, and it'll take just a moment to open up my digitizing program. Now I get the same wizard we would have seen in Premiere Plus 2, and I'm just going to tell it that I want to Actually, I'm just going to click cancel because it's going to take me in, and it sized my hoop here to the 100 by 100 hoop that I was working with over embroidery. So that quickly I'm over in embroidery, or in the digitizing module, and it tells me that I'm editing this from the embroidery module. Now all I want to do here today is just create an easy applique shape. So I'm going to go over to the Quick Create tab. And these settings will work just like they do in Premiere Plus 2. If I don't want a fill pattern, for example, because I'm creating an applique, I just click the top half of that button, or I click the drop down and select no fill, and whatever object I create now won't have a fill. I do want it to have a satin line, and I do want it to have an applique, so I'm going to click the top half of the applique button. So now whatever I create will have a placement stitch, and a tack down stitch, and that final satin stitch. Now what I always like to do before I create anything is come all the way over to my options and click Fill Area and Line. And for this one, because I'm going to be finishing the edge, I'm going to take my satin stitch to about a 5. I think I like that width just a little bit better for this kind of thing where I'm going to be trimming around the outside of an ornament or something like that. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to pick a shape now. And I think I'm just going to go with the hexagon today. So when I click Shape now, it's going to create a hexagon for me, and it's an applique. I'm going to hold down the Control key and the Shift key. The Control key will keep it in proportion, and the Shift key is going to resize it from the center. So when I hold both of those down and drag out, it's going to keep it nice and centered. And I'm just going to kind of eyeball it until it's filling most of my hoop. So now if I go into the design plan and we look at this, we're going to see that it has a placement stitch. We would lay down the fabric. It's going to do a tack down with the double stitch and then finish with the satin. I want to make a couple of changes to this because I know that I need to add that extra tack down stitch to hold on the backing fabric. And I love doing this in digitizing or in the Create module in Premiere Plus 2 because I can see in the film strip exactly what's happening. Now to do this, we're going to go to the Edit tab, and I'm going to click a button called Break Apart. And when I click Break Apart, it's going to take this piece that had all the placement and tack down, and it's going to put it on my film strip with one piece for every step that happens. So I can see everything that's happening in that applique design. So here's my running stitch, then it stops, then I would lay down my piece of fabric, it's going to do the double stitch, it's going to stop, we would trim the fabric, and then it would finish with the satin stitch. I do want to make a couple of changes to this design. Notice we have the stop commands, and I'm going to replace those with color changes because I find that easier when I'm working at my machine and I have one of these projects with multiple steps. I'm also going to add one more color change or one more step that's going to do the tack down for the back of the fabric. So the first thing I want to do is just get rid of these extra color changes or the extra stop commands. So I'm going to go back over to the Quick Create tab. And in the film strip, when you select an object, if you insert it, it's going to insert directly after what you have selected. So if I want another color change to happen after the running stitch, I'm going to click the drop down below color change and just click on a color. And now, after it does that running stitch, my machine's going to ask me for my next color thread. Now, since the machine is doing that, I don't need this stop command anymore. So I'm going to right click and delete it. Then I would lay down my applique piece, I would lay down my double stitch, and then I need to trim my fabric. So I want another color stop here so that it changes colors again so I know I have something to do at my machine. I'm going to right click. Oh, and I can insert color change here, or I can click the drop down here and just do another color change. And the main thing I'm doing is making sure that I use a different color for every one of these steps. So after this gray, what I need is another stitch on the back that's going to hold down that backing fabric. And I'm going to just use a running stitch to do that. And the quickest way to do this is I'm going to select my running stitch here in the film strip, right click and copy it, select that gray color stop I added, right click and choose paste. And now it's added another running stitch in my design after I've trimmed my fabric. Then my last step is going to be my satin stitch, and I want that to be in green, so I'm going to click the color change, select a green color, and again I don't need to stop if I've added a color change. So now when I right click and choose delete, now let's look at what's going to happen on this design. When we run through, it's going to do the placement stitch in that blue. We're going to lay down our piece of fabric, and then it's going to do a double stitch in the light blue. We're going to trim the fabric away. Then we would stitch all of the stuff in the ornament, and we'll get to that in a moment. But then we have that gray stitch to tack down the backing fabric, and then my final green satin stitch. And that is everything that I need for this applique part of the project. Now, if you're working in Premiere Plus 2 at this point, you would save your EDO file, and then you would export out a stitch file and bring that back into the embroidery module. Or you could go to the Home tab, click the bottom half of this button and choose Copy Embroideries. If I click the bottom half of Copy and choose Copy Embroidery, then I would have a design that I could paste back into embroidery. But here in mySewnet Digitizing, if I'm finished digitizing, I'm just going to close this window, and now I'm back in my embroidery module with my digitized object. Now let's think about this object for just a second. If we remember what we created, the first two colors, the blue and the light blue, are going to be the placement and tack down stitches for the top fabric. After that happens, we want to be able to do our lettering and another design, and then we want the satin stitch and the backing fabric to happen. So we really want to turn this piece into two separate objects. And to do that, I'm going to go over to the Modify tab. And it's telling me that it's going to have to turn this into stitches if I want to modify it. That is quite all right. So I'm going to click OK. And what I want to do is I want to make design 1 and 2 one design, and I want to make colors 1 and 2 one design, and I want to make colors 3 and 4 one design. So what I'm going to do is uncheck colors 1 and 2. When I uncheck a color here on the Modify tab, it hides those stitches so I can't select them or delete them. Now I'm going to click Select All Visible and click Cut, which is going to put it on my clipboard. Now when I go back to the Home tab and click Paste, I will see that I have two designs here. This first design is my dark blue and light blue, so that's going to be the placement and tack down stitch for my top fabric. And then color number 3 is the gray, which is the tack down for the backing fabric, and the green, which is my final satin stitch. So now, if I want to reorder this, all I need to do is grab my 2020, because if I move it right now, it's behind my fabric. But if I drag it down in my film strip, now it's happening after that first object, so I can just position it where I want. And looking at that, I maybe want to make it just a little bit smaller. So I'm going to go into Edit Lettering, and I'm going to just take down the size just a little bit. I've got to readjust that angle. I like that. Now I need to come in and I'm going to add a super design. So I'm going to go to my super designs and go to holidays. And with those super designs visible, I'm going to come over to the far right of the super designs and click the third button here on the bottom, which is going to show me all of my holiday designs. And I'm going to go to this candy cane. And it comes in, it's set at about 3 inches, 76 millimeters. Notice if I hover over that, it's 2.99 inches. But remembering that my ornament is only 4 inches tall, I'm going to take this down to about 60, I think. Maybe about 62, which is going to be almost 2.5 inches. Then I'm going to click Apply, and I think that's going to fit better. Now, I do want to flip it so it's going the other direction. So if I click on the arrow on the left side, it's going to mirror it left to right. And then also I have a button here on the right side. This little handle will let me rotate it. So I'm going to rotate that just a little bit and position it kind of like that. And I think I like the way that looks. Now, I want to make a couple of other changes. So the first thing I need to do is make sure that it stitches before my ending border. So I'm going to just drag it up in my film strip. And then I want to look at my colors for just a second. So in my candy cane, I have a red here that is 2281 Jockey Red. So I'm going to select my lettering, double click on my red here, and take it to 2281 Jockey Red. And then I'll go ahead, since I'm here on this design, this is 2343 Eggshell. So I'll go to my candy cane and I'll change this one to 2343 Eggshell. I don't really care which of the whites I use because I'm going to pick my color when I get to my machine. So I'm not too worried about that. I'm going to make that just a little bit larger. I think it's going to fit. I'm just eyeballing that a little and I think that's going to be great. Now for my green, I do want to make one decision though, because 2578 is the green here in my candy cane. And if I look at my final satin, it is 2578 Harvest Green. Is that what that one was? 2578. I don't want those to be the same color, even though I'll probably use the same color whenever I stitch it out, but I don't want those to color sort together. So I'm going to just pick a different green for my candy cane, even though I'll use the same green, but that way they won't color sort together when it stitches out. So there we have it. So now if we go back to the Home tab, open up my design player, and let's just see if we can make this a little bit larger. I'm going to hold down the Control key and use the mouse wheel on my keyboard, and that will let me zoom into that design a little bit. And now we have the placement stitch. We would lay down the fabric. It's going to do my tack down stitch in the light blue. We would trim the fabric. Then it's going to stitch my red and all of my colors to do that design. Finish it with the satin stitch. Then I would lay the piece of fabric on the back and real quickly there, you can't see it, but it does that running stitch around to tack on that backing fabric. I would trim it, and then it would finish with a nice satin stitch around the outside edge. And right before it did that satin stitch, I would probably tape a little loop of ribbon onto the back so that I end up with a hanger for this. And then it's going to do that final satin stitch. And there we go. And that's how you can create an in-the-hoop ornament here in mySewnet embroidery. I do want to hop over to Premiere Plus 2 for just 1 second and show one thing that's different. So notice I have my lettering and I have my border here, and currently it's not in the right order. Because I don't have the film strip here, I'm going to use this tool, which is Layout Order. And if I click on Layout Order, I can move a design forward or backwards in order. And I want to move it forward here so that it's visible. And then I'll go ahead and split that one more time so we see how that works again. So if I go to my Modify tab, and I'm going to hide colors 1 and 2. So I've hidden my placement and tack down. I'm going to select all visible, cut it so it's on my clipboard, go back to the Home tab, and click Paste. And I think it's actually in the right order now, but the best way to make sure something is in the right order in Premiere Plus 2, since we don't see it in the film strip, is if I do a Select All, I will see all my colors in the order that they're going to happen. So I have my light blue, or my dark blue, my light blue, my lettering colors, and then I have my tack down for the backing fabric and the final satin stitch. So that's a way you can check to make sure everything's in the right order, and you can use the Layout Order tool if you need to change it in any way. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm excited to maybe see what you do with this project and maybe create some other ornaments and share them with me. Thank you very much. Have a great day.